Well, we've just wrapped up 4 days on snow. Storm skiing yesterday. Today, full bluebird, fresh snow. Wildly good day out there. Got to make turns with some of you today, all of you at some point. But this is just sometimes we get to be particularly grateful, I think, for days, and this definitely goes down as one of them. So amazing. What a way to wrap up the on snow portion of this summit 2023. And now a few final panel sessions. What we are doing here is talking about athletes and product designers and how athletes work with product designers. And maybe we uncover a few tensions here. But maybe mostly we're just looking to pull back the curtain on this. And then, as we always do, I will stop asking questions and open it up to our audience that has very much proven this week to ask very smart questions. So that is our agenda. Let's go down the line and talk a little bit, introduce yourselves, and maybe just talk a little bit about sort of why you are on this panel on this topic of athletes and product designers.
Yeah, I'm Jed Yeiser. I'm the ski product director for K2 Skis and Line Skis. I've been designing skis for K2 for 12 years and was building skis in my garage back home in Vermont before then. And basically, I'm here because I work with athletes a lot, like McKenna. And it's something that I love doing. It's a part of my job that I really enjoy. And hopefully I can lend some clarity as to how at least we as K2 in Line work with our athletes to develop product.
I'm McKenna Petersen. I have been a K2 athlete for 10 years and have spent a good portion of that working with Jed and K2's product development team.
I'm Tyler Curle. I grew up with my mom as a K2 rep, actually. And when I was 13, I got involved with Moment Skis. I've been with the company for 12 years now and work there. And in my free time, I compete on the Freeride World Qualifiers and am an athlete for the company as well.
I'm glad that we've just established that you started with child labor. So, my name's Drew Peterson. We've already established that I'm still wearing my ski boots. I have a habit when I'm at Crested Butte of accidentally skiing bell to bell because it's so fun. On a less prestigious note, I'm a professional skier for Salomon. I started this ski career and started working in gear design when I was 16. And ever since, I've been working at a number of different brands, and now I've been at Salomon. This is year 6, so I've worked on everything from hard goods to apparel to helmets and goggles and all the fun stuff.
Yeah. Tyler, I want you to say just a little bit more about, because I think you kind of, we don't say soft sold, but undersold in terms of what you're doing. So you said the part like you are currently a comp skier. You said you work for Moment, but say a bit more about what you are doing at Moment.
Yeah, so for all growing up, I was on the production side of things, making skis around school, in the summer, all that kind of thing. I've now moved up. I'm helping run our athlete team, doing some marketing stuff, and running our storefront day to day. And to elaborate more on the ski competition side of things, I do a year-long tour, pretty rigorous, pretty crazy schedule, but we travel around, and the goal is to qualify and do well enough to make it onto the Freeride World Tour. And in doing that, I find value kind of relating it to the products and the discussion we're having tonight. And that when I'm in the start gate or up there hiking up or something, everyone I'm with, we're all talking for quite a while, and it's usually about gear. And it's either something is doing well or it sucks and we hate it. And we're all pretty much in unison on that. So that's my elaboration.
Jed, talk about, at least at K2 and your time there, how has this worked? Engineers working with athletes, has it been pretty similar over a decade, or has it evolved, or depends who's on the team? Talk a bit about that.
I mean, I think it's very athlete dependent. But at, I think the most succinct level, or the way that we work with athletes, is to direct and evaluate product. And there's a lot in that, but that's I think a good way of packaging what we do. Obviously, not all of our consumers are athletes. And so we need to spend a lot of time testing and evaluating skis that are not designed for athletes. Some of our athletes, like McKenna, have really shown a great ability to put themselves in the shoes of someone not themselves, or a different consumer, and provide really concise feedback on prototypes and on skis. And so those are the athletes that we tend to integrate more fully into our development programs. But all of our athletes are involved with product development from, in one respect or another. We'll have meetings with product development and athletes, and just they've got their ear to the ground. And we really need to be hearing what's working for them, sort of like what Tyler was saying. What's working, what's not, where do we need to be going as a brand for them as athletes, and also for skiing. What are they seeing? What do they need? And how can we be doing that? I think that's.
Yeah.
And certainly if you have athletes where we have pro models like Seth and some other athletes we're working with now, the working dynamic is a little bit different, where it's really the athlete is driving all of the product decisions and all of the evaluations, and we're really just there to sort of facilitate that. I think like working with Eric Pollard was a great example, where he would come up with the idea. He really had a concept of what he wanted this ski to be, and we were the tool that he used to sort of have those skis come to fruition.
McKenna, you've worked with a number of companies on a number of different products. I would be interested to hear you talk about the range of, Jed said it varies, right? So just in your own experience, talk a bit about the range of what you've been asked to do when it comes to product. Here's a new thing. So walk us through the sort of options that you've experienced.
Yeah, it's a pretty big range, actually. It's, all the way from what do you want? Mm-hmm. What's your dream ski? What are you looking for? Like, let's just write it down and start and see where we can go from there. To, we've come down to these 3 prototypes for a ski that I might not ski every day, but we're going to ship them to you. Will you please put this many days on them and give us feedback? So it's kind of all over the board, from, helping create something that I want from my brain and my desires, to giving feedback on product that K2 just needs people to ski on and give feedback on in order to create the best product possible.
And follow up, how often does it happen where you are told, here's a new product, just go be on it and see if you break it? Like, just trying to test the durability part of whether it's a pack or a pair of skis or boot. Is it ever that simple?
It's never that simple, no. I think that they do. I think most brands do all of their durability testing in-house. At least to the point of go ski this and see if you can break it. That sounds slightly sketchy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
No, I wonder.
I don't really want to be in that situation.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't want to either. Okay, for Tyler and Drew, talk a bit about the dynamics of an athlete team, how it works at Moment, what's happening with Salomon, and because I think this is kind of the rub. If any of you this week were skiing with McKenna or Tyler or Drew or Hoji, etc., the rest of us don't probably ski quite like they do. And then we have this issue where companies are selling products to, mortals. And so we have incredibly high level, highly skilled athletes on the one hand weighing in on something that's going to then go to those of us who are on a different level. That's the most euphemistic way I could say, right? Like just a different level. So talk a little bit about that, because it seems obvious how that would create tension, right?
So with Moment and our athlete team and testing, we will usually shoot for a specific product in a certain category that we're after, and we'll have the athlete team test that. And we acknowledge that the athlete team is kind of on the edge of the spectrum. They're pretty crazy when you see them skiing. They do stuff that you're probably like, all right, that looks pretty stupid. And then they pull it off and you're like, oh, all right, sweet. Pretty cool. And what we also like to do, we have all them, they're the show ponies, they're gonna have the gear, but we bring in local friends, friends of the company, girlfriends, wives, different partners, all that kind of stuff. And we wanna get all different ranges of performance and feedback on that ski. We acknowledge that if we're making a competition ski, like something I might prefer, which is gonna be pretty heavy, might have metal and be very directional, that's going to cater very well to me, putting a lot of force on that ski, trying to ski pretty fast. And I acknowledge that when we give that ski to a customer who maybe they have only a park background, no racing background, or they're learning different style of skiing, we know that they're probably not going to get along with it. So it's really fun and interesting when we make a ski that has a pretty large range or a sweet spot where we can have a top-end athlete performing on that ski, and I can put someone on there who is a low-level, intermediate, maybe kind of picking up in speed, and they can both get on the same product and feel the same performance that's going well for them.
Yeah, from a broad perspective, because I've worked with a number of different companies, there have certainly been a number of different dynamics, and that largely depends on what product categories and then what product lines we're designing. So like one of my prior sponsors, like we were tasked with completely redesigning the entire apparel line for ski, which was an awesome opportunity. So we spent an entire weekend, like 10, 12-hour days as a full team ideating on what this could become. And what came out of that weekend was amazing. And that one was an example where the entire team worked on the whole thing. And we worked on the men's and women's sides, which I think is very cool. And, you know, at all the companies I've been at, that's not very common that we get to work men and women together, because I think that it's actually very valuable, especially for men who are more commonly in positions of influence, to be able to learn from what the female perspective is, so that we can keep that consciously in mind when we're designing products for all genders, and just opening our minds and really centering in on keeping the consumer front of mind. More specifically, like some of how we work on it at Salomon is really, like I said, it's dependent on product category, but we'll create these like little focus groups of sorts. So like if we're going to design a ski from like 100 to 108 in width, like that's my domain. And that's the product group, that's the focus group that I'm on. But if we're designing a big fat powder ski that like you really aren't gonna have to ski anything but powder on, that's the Canadians on our team. That's Stan Ray, Alexi Godbout. That's like the QST blank. But there's a huge range. And so then like it also works in different ways. Like right now I'm working on prototype ski boot, and that's on like a very like one-on-one basis. Like I literally just text the product designer in France and he'll text me on WhatsApp. And one of the funny things about working with French people is they call ski boots shoes. So he's like, do you have any updates on the shoes? Like, well, like
I'm still wearing the shoes.
Like my cowboy boots clip into a pair of bindings, but I think we're talking about this touring boot. So, that huge range is really dependent on what we're trying to create, and I think what we're trying to do. But, one of like the positions that I feel like I've had success in is really keeping in mind the consumer, because we can create products for the best skiers in the world all day long, but that might not translate. Like Tyler said, like I love a stiff metal directional ski, but a lot of people don't. And like yeah, I get to work on and ski on stiff metal directional skis. If you skied with me this week, I was skiing on our stance line, stance 96 and stance 102, because I really don't believe that you need much wider ski than that for skiing in Colorado. But like, you know, we have to keep that in mind of the consumer, and then we have to work on the rest of the product range too. And I think that that's also like how, you know, like Jed, you mentioned with McKenna, I think that's a big part of how athletes build relationships with these brands is the people who are in positions, you know, where you get to start working on product design, and you can have that mindset of the consumer, and like a marketing perspective is immensely valuable. And like for me, I have a bachelor's degree in marketing from the University of Utah. And so in many ways, like, you know, if life had taken a couple different twists and turns, I'd just be on the other side of the table. So in a lot of ways, I think that that's where the success at a lot of these companies comes to, is when you're working with a good team that's keeping the end consumer in mind, but also using the experience and expertise of your athlete team, that's when we're designing the best products.
To jump in there quickly, I think talking to athletes helps us identify the end consumer and the needs of the end consumer better, right? Like I spend a lot of time sitting behind a computer screen. These guys are out there skiing with people, and there's no better resource for a company to understand the target market and the consumer that we're designing product for than to talk to people that are out there doing it every day. But yeah, I agree with everything you just said. Well done, man.
Yeah.
But you don't need a marketing degree to be a pro skier, because it would have been a lot cheaper to not get that.
Gotcha. So, Jed, we are currently setting things up a little bit. The regular public, people who enjoy skiing on over here, athletes over here. How often, in your experience, or maybe in things you've heard from other companies, how often is it actually as tidy as that? We've already identified that can create issues. You've got athletes over here and consumers over here, but what if, like, how often do all the athletes agree? Or is it splintered a lot?
I'll let you know if it ever happens. I mean, in general, one athlete will really like one thing about a certain prototype, and then another athlete thinks that that's horrible. And this just comes down to selecting athletes and working with people that understand the consumer and understand what we're trying to do. So is there always 100% consensus on the performance of a prototype among athletes? I can think of maybe one, the 98. But it's the discussions that really sort of help us evaluate, like, is this ready? And just because we're designing for a consumer that may not be an athlete doesn't mean that athletes won't really like that ski as well. And vice versa, if we have a project where we say, like, this is just an athlete ski, we're just taking athlete feedback, this is a ski that we want our athletes to be stoked on, that doesn't mean that there aren't a large number of consumers that ski is going to work out very well for as well, right? Like there's not like a line where it's like, you'll only like this ski if you're filming lines in AK with MSP. That just doesn't exist. There are a lot of really strong skiers in the customer pool, and those tend to gravitate more towards the skis that our athletes want. I don't know if that answered your question.
I think so.
Okay.
You all three, have you had sort of division amongst the team? Oh yeah. Okay. Drew?
Oh, of course.
Is it pretty frequent?
Yes and no. I think that Salomon has a really credible team with a lot of experience. So we're all kind of like set in our ways and set in our preferences in a lot of ways. So yeah, we definitely disagree quite a bit, but you know, like that's the reason that you like divide into these focus groups where people are going to be able to focus on what they're most credible at. So like, you know, like Greg Hill is always going to be better at lightweight touring equipment than I am. And, you know, I think that's the point, is like, we're not trying to appease an entire athlete team, just like you're not trying to appease every single skier with every single ski.
And then another point that I think it's important to make is when K2 in particular is trying to bring a ski to market, the designers and the engineers already have an idea in mind of what they want the ski to do. So then when we are out there on the prototypes giving feedback, they give us a list. We want the ski to do X, Y, and Z. We want it to feel like this. Let us know how it's performing in these categories. So in a way, we take ourselves out of the equation. I'm skiing on the ski with a list of things in mind of what the ski is supposed to do, and then giving feedback on how well it is doing those things. I'm not skiing the ski to be like, this is mine. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'm doing that, but not as often. That's that's a small percentage.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah.
No, and I think like that's the more athlete focused a ski is, the more we're going to give McKenna a ski and say like, go ski it and let us know what you think. Yeah. The more we want McKenna's feedback on a project we're working on that's a little bit outside of the skiing that McKenna does, that's where we'll hand her a product brief that hopefully in detail describes our target consumer, what that consumer wants out of the ski, and sort of prioritizing 5 different performance priorities that we think are important for the consumer that we're building the ski for.
Your turn. Questions? The question is, Jed, what is your favorite part of your job?
I don't know that I have an answer. It sort of shifts based on the time of year. I'm a nerd. I really like math, right? And being able to like break things down and take a problem and break it down in digestible chunks is gratifying in a way that that's pretty addictive. And I think that's one of the large reasons that I've stayed doing what I'm doing. I work with a great team of people, both internally and the athlete team. And I think it's a combination of being able to work with people that I genuinely enjoy being around outside of the office, who share my passions, and then being able to bury my head in the sand and just break a problem down with math. Thanks, heads.
Okay. So the question is, and I think I am going to keep this one focused on ski. Given that you all are working on the future, which is what you do you think that would you say that we are currently in an evolutionary stage with respect to skis or revolutionary stage? It's never always revolutionary, right? This is always happening in stages. Where do you think we are at this moment in time? Tyler.
I've been pretty excited. I don't want to claim revolutionary, but I come from a brand where we make a lot of weird niche stuff, and it does well for our crowd and people who are buying it. Lately, I think last year and the year before, I'm seeing bigger brands do some pretty funky, fun stuff, and then they get a little creative with the graphic, which I also really appreciate. But just focusing on the shapes that are coming out, I think that unique skis with very niche uses are going to be pretty popular, and I think we're all going to acknowledge that. And then I think the designs that are working right now for a lot of companies, even just camera profiles that are pretty similar, I think those are going to get pretty dialed in the coming years, and I'm excited to see for X shape, whatever, who has the best one. That's what I do when I come here. I like to try a lot of similar skis from different companies, see what one does the best, and then I like to try the crazy, weird, wonky thing that everyone's excited about and asking about. And snowblading is probably in the future as well. I think that should really be included there.
I hope so.
By the way,
and we have Wendy Fisher now on the Moment Skis Blade team. We'd like to claim that.
yeah, that
All right.
happened. Was I on that chairlift? I think I was on that chairlift. I was like, we are making things happen at the Blister Summit.
Yeah.
One sec, just to add credibility. Tyler, how did the Pain McShlonky hot dog downhill go last year?
I was doing pretty well. And then before the finish line, I went high, Connery London went low, and then we hit each other. And then I think think I almost killed him, and I almost it wasn't great. And then we all hiked up under the thing, and we're like, "Are you alive?" And it was great. We all lived. Close calls every day. Bushy.
Those calls.
And then we went snowblading all day.
Huh. Luke Kappa today busted out the moment blades, and I promise you will be seeing some photography in this next buyer's guide. Luke absolutely crushed today on blades. Very, very proud moment. You will be seeing more of some of Luke on blades in that buyer's guide for sure, and it should probably be the cover photo. So anyway, I don't know if we're quite ready yet to put blades on the cover photo, but we might be time. Jed, thoughts on this? Evolutionary or revolutionary stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think right now we're absolutely in an evolutionary stage, and that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of room for us to grow. But I think particularly when it comes to ski shaping and some mechanical characteristics, your EI and GJ profile, we're still refining those, and customer needs are evolving, and so we're changing sort of our design paradigms to meet changing consumer needs. There are a number of things that we're working on that, should they work out, I think will be revolutionary, but we really don't. There's not light at the end of the tunnel yet. And I think the parts of this industry that I think do deserve the sort of revolutionary label are the tools we're building to better understand skis and to manufacture skis better. And those are very much behind the scenes, but we are doing things, building skis, and like what the Blister Labs team and others are doing to understand ski dynamics. That is revolutionary, but it doesn't necessarily mean the product is revolutionary. I don't know if that.
Yeah. McKenna,
No,
evolutionary?
I think we're in an evolutionary period, but something cool that could potentially be revolutionary is the use of more sustainable materials. So I think that's something that's, starting to be dabbled with, and if that catches on and becomes something that goes into all of the big brands, it'd be pretty revolutionary.
It's a great point. Revolutionary doesn't always have to be in terms of shape or performance. Yeah. Yep. Drew is nodding vigorously.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of evolutionary. That's kind of like the natural iteration. But I think that we're definitely in a revolutionary phase as well as a ski industry as a whole. Like at Salomon, personally, we're kind of in both stages, because I think in a lot of ways, like evolutionary is what we see when we, tweak one ski a little bit from the year before. And we say, oh, wow, there's a new QST 106. This is what's different. I'm going to go out and check that out on the wall at the ski shop. But I think what's revolutionary is when a brand commits to redesigning a line, even though it's selling well, because something in there is going to be revolutionary, even if it's just at that brand. But I think that the most revolutionary piece in the ski industry, like McKenna said, is the sustainability of materials. And I think that is industry-wide. We are working on some cool things at Salomon, but I think that companies like Wonder Alpine are really what is revolutionary in pushing us forward. Like making skis out of algae, that is awesome. And that is what's going to change the paradigm. And I think that another thing that's revolutionary too is that we're really trying to cater to a broader swath of consumers and a broader swath of skiers, but with specificity. And again, I would say, especially on the women's side, I think that there's been a lot of revolutionary ski design. There's a lot of companies committing a lot more of their budgets and a lot more of their efforts into that. So I think that that's the revolutionary side right now.
Just to jump in again really quickly, to build on what you were saying and McKenna was saying, I think from a sustainability standpoint and just overall, the most revolutionary thing we can do as an industry is figure out how to use skis at the end of their life. And that's a really hard problem to crack. There's been a lot of work going towards that. But if you can upcycle or recycle your skis, that is a huge revolution that benefits everybody in this room.
And just to add one thing there, what would be most revolutionary is if the entire ski industry was able to combine efforts to move that forward rather than just looking at it from a competitive and capitalistic point of view.
That is happening a bit.
Yeah,
Do you
it's
wanna say
starting.
any more on that?
I wasn't at those meetings, so I can't really say, but I do know that several representatives from every large brand and a lot of small brands are meeting regularly to talk about how we can do this. It's not a simple problem.
So the question is, first, not sure whether to categorize this as evolutionary or revolutionary, but a number of companies are now using a new BOA system on a number of boots. And I guess the question is, what took so long?
You really should talk to Tom Petrowski, who's in here somewhere, who's our boot product line manager, who will.
By the way, we went deep on this at
Okay.
another panel, like real deep.
We did go
Yeah.
pretty deep.
Yeah, so
The short answer is that the BOA that is on ski boots was not available before, and it's stronger and it is designed from the ground up for this application. And until that system was available from BOA, the BOA reels that were available weren't well suited to ski boots. Is that?
Does it look good enough to become an industry standard then? Yes.
So the follow-up question, no follow-up questions, but we'll give you this one. So then the question is, do we think there's the potential here for this to become a new industry standard? I think I heard that probably was Tom out there in the audience. There was a loud yes.
With a slightly English accent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And where we landed on this the other night on the panel session was, consumers are going to decide. So if the market is into it, this will be around, and I would, in that case, it will become more and more present. If for some reason customers aren't into it, it will go away. That's a real easy prediction, I think. Not really a prediction, just statement of fact. Yeah. Question is, what is the most interesting or weirdest prototype ski? We'll put this to all of you, that you have either tried to design or any of you have actually been on that never made it to market.
So made it to market does not mean that we just made them for a heli skiing op. So I'm correctly answering the question. But we have a ski called the Wildcat. If you're looking at the dimensions, pretty similar to Black Ops 118, Ben Shetler, Armada JJ, all that kind of stuff. And we call it the Fat Cat normally. And we're like, well, what's the fattest cat? The Garfield. So we made a Garfield. We all rode the Garfield, and we're like, we don't ride powder deep enough for this ski to actually do something for us. And then we kind of let that sit for a while, and then we just made a bunch for a heli ski op that I don't know.
Wow.
Did you get a heli ski trip out of the deal?
I am turning down a heli ski trip to go to a ski competition, and that sucks.
So there is literally a Moment ski out in the world, and it says Garfield on it.
For trademark, I thought we should do Narfield, and then like the N is silent, Coming soon, maybe.
Everybody was super impressed with that. By the way, you just grabbed the whole room.
And the
It
graphic
was
is
like,
just
yeah,
lasagna.
Narfield.
With a cat.
Okay. Weirdest design? And did you drum it up, or did somebody else like?
I mean, I can't think of any product that didn't end up on the market. It was a prototype for a project that ended up in the market. So it's not like we tried something and we're like, I'll work on this is done. The first versions of the Sakana that I did with Eric were pretty weird. I'm glad they didn't make it to market. And then earlier at my time at K2, I didn't do this. This was a guy, Matty O'Loughlin. We were working on a project that at that time we were calling the Nightmare, and that became the Powabunga. But we're looking at ways of sort of reducing swing weight in the ski. And we were using 3 different steel profiles or steel edge thicknesses throughout the ski. So we had 3 different base thicknesses. And yeah, it was a cool idea. It didn't work very well.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Yep. That seems like that's one of those good accidents of history, or like, we don't.
Yeah,
don't
we
really
tried it.
Yeah,
Don't
do
need to
that.
get yet.
Okay. Anybody else?
I haven't tried anything weird. I don't think I don't think the weird projects make it to me. I've definitely tried some prototypes that were a hard no right away, but
Not
that's
because
usually
they were out there
in
per se.
consensus. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like Jed said, like whatever we work on, like we learn lessons from, and we will iterate on it, and it leads to something, even if it's not the original concept of the ski. So like my 2 prior ski sponsors, like I was like one of the first 3 athletes in North America for faction skis, and some of the stuff that we were working on when I was literally in high school is part of their ski line now that people were testing here. When I was at DPS, like I worked on the very first version of a prototype ski 7 years ago, maybe 8 years ago, that now they have that version, the new iteration after years and years of trying to improve upon at this event. At Salomon, I'll just say that they brought the BBR to market.
Uh-huh.
So that says enough. And
Wow.
I'm quite certain that I'm okay to say that.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. Yeah, I kind of erased that one from my memory. So thanks for. So the question is, when you're prototyping a ski, I guess this one, we'll let Jed start with this, but when you're prototyping a ski and you're getting athlete feedback, how often or how do you decide if someone's like, I don't like this thing, I didn't get along with it? When do you think that might just be you versus, okay, there really might be something that we need to go back to the drawing board on?
I mean, I think you don't know, which is why we're very careful with the athletes that we work with, because there's a level of trust in providing that feedback. Certainly, there are times that we feel that certain feedback will be colored by a given athlete's preferences. But again, because we know them so well, we can kind of color that input a little bit. And it's why we don't work with, unless it's a pro model, a single athlete, right? Because we don't know if someone is just saying, I want to drive this project hard this way. And so we need to take a lot of data and get a lot of feedback and sort of combine all of that into meaningful information. And the more and better data you have, the more you can distill a signal from noise. So.
Exactly. Increase the sample pool. Multiple athletes. You can kind of figure out what works for everybody, what's kind of the same, what one person might be a little bit of an outlier.
I would say if the feedback you're getting is consistent on a particular issue, and then you have the range of testers from the intermediate to the super pro skier, if you can kind of figure that out and then solve that by changing one variable at a time, and then if we can then put that ski on everyone else again, and then it's solved, it's like, okay, cool, pretty confident with that. I would say big picture, given our group and our sample size and all that kind of stuff, we're going to do the best we can do. So a ski that we all appreciate might make it to market where a lot of people are like, this is kind of funky and weird. But for the people who are buying it, works out well. So I think all in the testing, all different levels, you try to avoid that as best you can.
I think a lot of the reason that companies work with athletes on product design isn't just that we're good at sliding down snow. It's that we have a specific skill set. So I think we build relationships with those companies and we build relationships with designers where they know what we like, they know what we're going to be fine-tuned to. And so part of being an athlete too is you have your own style. So I know that, product designers know that this is something that we want that athlete to try or this athlete to try. And then the other thing that I'd add too that balances out and going to, the point of increasing the sample size is that like brands also aren't only testing these skis with their global professional athlete team and then going to market. You know, on the athlete side, we also test it at the ambassador level. And then also like we take it out with, you know, key retailers so that we can get it out and see like, you know what, people like literally like shop guys like are feeling in a ski. And, you know, local rippers, like, you know, ski patrollers, like dishwashers, like who just shred every day, like their input is also valuable. And that goes to the sample size so that it's not skewed only to these outliers of professional athletes.
When you said that, you know, as athletes, part of the deal isn't just doing cool things on snow, but providing that feedback, is that more true now than it was maybe 20 years ago or 30 years ago? Or do you think it's always been? Because it strikes me as like maybe back in the 90s, 80s, 90s, it was a bit more of like, you're really good at this, go jump off something really big. And my hunch is increasingly that's not going to do it. You need to be able to provide another level of value, and that is the feedback that you were just talking about, Drew. Do you think that's right? Or so is that something that's changed and we have more of that? It's more of a requirement now to be able to give that feedback than it used to be. Yes or no?
Yes, but I'm 28 years old, and I'm pretty sure Tyler's 25. Yeah, so not sure exactly what it was like to be a pro skier 30 years ago. I you know, tore pictures out of magazines and put them on my wall. But I will say that, you know, the athlete sponsorship model has changed a lot because, you know, back then when I grew up watching Blizzard of Oz or, you know, old Greg Stump films, the way that sponsorships worked was that a ski brand would sponsor the film, and then the film would say, okay, you're skiing on K2 skis, you're skiing on Salomon skis. You know, and these athletes were just like, okay, sweet, we got free product, and everybody's on the same ski. They didn't work on gear design at all. The athlete sponsorship model now is radically different. So yes, I think that as a whole, the athlete sponsorship model has created a lot of depth, and it's different for every athlete where your value is held. Maybe it's in marketing direction, maybe it's in creative, maybe, you know, it's in filming, but maybe it's in gear design. So yes.
I think you owe me an apology because you gave a really good answer about the history of these things after talking about, you know, kind of snarkily how would you know? So you owe me one.
The reason that Tyler and I are on this panel is because we have respect for the people who came before us. We were talking about this at the bar last night, talking about our favorite skiers and favorite movies. Like, you got to know the history of skiing, you know, especially if you're trying to be a part of the future.
To add on that with him, great model. That might be why it was kind of awkward answering the question. But I wasn't around either, but pretty big nerd, and I've watched a lot of old stuff. And I would say that from the fan side of things, I could tell you the skier and the brand association. I knew who was connected with what. Nowadays, as a fan, when I watch Drew, he might put out a sick ski segment, like maybe, I don't know, you're pretty okay. And I'll watch it, and that's awesome. But I also really value hearing him talk about product and his experiences and all of that kind of stuff. Like, I want to know the individual, I want to know their story, and that is very valuable as well. So I think athletes like him are kind of shining more now, and that's more valuable, and you can sell the story and the longevity with that, and those athletes can continue to be with these companies and they're really old, because I don't care if Drew's 45 and he's not hucking double backflips anymore, but if he's still skiing to the potential that he wants to ride at, to whatever age, I'm going to be a fan. I'm going to respect him. I'm going to appreciate what he says about his companies and the gear that he's on.
And to that effect, that's why it's important for brands to involve athletes in gear design, because athletes are developing a relationship with their fans. They're developing a relationship with the ski community. And so that's where there's added depth. And, you know, that's why it's a part of the athlete sponsorship model to now work on gear design, because people will take notice. So
the question is, how do your respective companies deal with this question of making slight tweaks or iterating on a ski or product that might be a bit of a fan favorite or it's doing really well in the market, and so you kind of want to keep it around, and then sometimes you just say it's time to be done and you move on to something else altogether different? And then a related question is, do you think this is a more complicated or less complicated issue depending on the size of the company, if it's a big company or a smaller company? Jed.
Yeah, someone else go.
Yeah.
I think maybe to take a step back, if we're at a point where there's a production ski where we're like, oh, we need to make changes, we as the development department have done a pretty poor job of developing that product. There are always cases where we will replace or update a beloved model. And when we do that, we genuinely believe that is because the customer has evolved, that the ski performance of the ski hasn't changed, but that the customer and the consumer that is looking for this has evolved. And that doesn't mean everybody's looking for something slightly different, but that the customer at the top of the bell curve has moved a little bit, and so we need to update our designs to do that. Are we right 100% of the time? No. I think we're right often. And that's, I guess, how we look at replacing a ski that's beloved. As far as making small tweaks, we're always talking internally as a design team and talking with our athletes about like, hey, it might be cool to try this, or let's take this ski and put a new core in it, or change the flex profile slightly, or add more rocker. And that's really more to inform future design decisions than to make any changes to stuff that's in a market. It's easy for me to say this. I certainly think it's easier for a small company to pivot than a large company, but that's because I know it's really tough to pivot, and I work for a large company. So,
Tyler?
From our end of things, I would say, kind of relating to that, it is much easier for us to pivot on the production side. I think that we still deal with the same customers who are married to something and they don't want to change. And I think the way to bring in a new product, if you're either updating it or getting rid of one and replacing it, it has to be so good that everyone who was a huge fan of the previous one just acknowledges that the new thing is better and it's going to be better for them and their experiences. They're going to have a good time. And then kind of being on the smaller side of things compared to K2, whenever we get rid of a ski, we get a lot of people who want us to bring it back. That's most of our customer service. So what we do is we're like, okay, we're going to have all of these models in the line throughout the year. We're going to keep producing them in our factory. But for all of you ski nerds who like whatever thing from the past, we'll usually bring that back and put it in our reserve series. We're only going to make a couple hundred of them, and they're going to be done for the year. We're not going to remake any more, and they might not come back next year. But we'll typically do an old cult-following graphic for some crazy ski, and at our level, we are able to do that.
I think that pretty much sums most of it up. From the evolution and iteration aspect, I think a lot of that is also just because we have fantastic product designers and engineers working 365 days a year. Well, no, that wouldn't be fair labor practice, but you get my point. They work full time. And those people don't just create a ski and then go sit on the couch and play video games until we need a new ski 3 years later. They're constantly working, and especially on materials and construction. Like Jed said, let's try a new core in there. So, at the factory and at the design center, like at Salomon, we can design and build every single product in our line at the Annecy Design Center in our office in France. So they are constantly trying to improve and tweak little things. And a lot of that doesn't make it to market, but the benefit of that is there are very intelligent people working on these little things that we're like, wow, actually, if we put that into what is a cult classic ski, it's going to improve it. And we test it and we see, yeah, it did improve it enough that we're going to add that to the market. And then, for coming up with a new totally new ski or a totally new line of skis. It's to what I said earlier, that we create these focus groups, and it's a multi-year process before we bring something to market. And it's also important to realize too that this isn't just athletes, this isn't just product designers, this is, an entire brand and the marketing department figuring out like what niche in the market do we need to serve. And so all of those factors are at play, especially when designing new products in a new line.
So this one for you specifically, there was a K2 ski called the Hellbent. You may have heard of it, might remember it. Definitely had a cult following. What are the odds of a Hellbent being brought back, and will Schmies be doing the graphic again?
I need to be careful about how I answer this question.
You're gonna get stuff thrown at you.
Yeah. We have talked about bringing the Hellbent back internally quite a bit. Last year was the Hellbent's 15th anniversary, and there was a push internally to do sort of what Tyler was talking about, like to make a small collection of that ski. I don't know if it's something we're going to be able to do. I do know it is something that we are going to continue to push for. As I don't make decisions on who does art, we have a very talented guy doing art right now, Brad Walters. The last time Brad and I talked about a Hellbent-esque project, he did mention Schmies perhaps coming in to at least do part of the graphic. That in no way is a promise that it is happening. And I'll have to text Ryan after this and be like, dude, you are about to get blown up. So Ryan's actually done graphics for us since the Hellbent. Like the last version of the pontoon Ryan did for us. So, yeah.
Well, listen, maybe we'll leave it on that note. Hellbent definitely coming back. You heard it here first at the Blister Summit 2023. So perfect. Thank you all.
Can we end it on like what one cult classic product we would bring back if we could?
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
All right, you go first, Drew.
Oh man. All right. I didn't
your
realize I was
question.
going to be first. Obviously at Salomon, we've got the Snowblade, we've got the 1080, but my favorite ski is the Force 9. Skinny straight skis. I've got a pair that are 200 centimeters, and I've got a picture of my dad holding the same pair of skis from early 90s with a huge bushy mustache. So yeah, I want to bring back the Force 9.
Tyler would have said the Wildcat, except we already got that done for you, so you're welcome.
No, I would. I talked to Joe last night. I would like to bring back the Salomon Ghost, Butte. That's my answer.
The Salomon Ghost boot has a cult thing going at moment in particular.
Yeah, and then also Candide hasn't stopped wearing them.
Whoa.
I mean, what else is there to say?
Just saying.
McKenna, cult.
I would like a K2 monoski.
Ooh.
I made a split monoski.
That's too
I
much.
think if it's a K2 product, it probably would be the K2-4, mostly because I think that ski really changed a lot of the ways that K2 thinks about ski design and ski shape. And I've never skied on it, and I'd be very curious to.
Say more about it.
So it was basically the K2-4 was the first shaped like parabolic side cut ski that K2 made, and sort of who knows how true this story is, but the story is that the product line was all developed, good to go. A new prototype was tried in like June at Mount Hood with side cut, and the product director said, we are redesigning everything. And basically the performance of that ski was so revolutionary that K2 jumped full on the side cut train. I don't know if that's true or not, but who knows? I think if you asked me taking K2 out of it, it probably would be the Salomon Pocket Rocket. That ski was like the first fat ski I ever had, and I lusted after it for so long. And I don't know how it would stack up against today's skis. I just kind of want a Pocket Rocket. So
Same.
yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty good. We're going to end on that. Thanks for pulling back the curtain. Sorry? Man. I mean, I just one. I mean, I got
3. I'll recap. So, Jonathan, the question is,
yeah.
if you were to bring back, we'll go with 1.
I mean, honestly, I am in a bit of a unique position because I kind of feel like I actually lived this, right? People know it's literally downstairs. Before I started Blister, the 190 centimeter Moment Bibby Pro was my favorite ski. It's 118 millimeters wide, so I wasn't skiing it every single day, but that was my favorite ski. And then someone not here right now named Luke Jacobson messed it up, in my humble opinion. And I remember he came to me at a trade show, walked up to me and said, "Don't be mad at me." That was it. Like, I had no context. He just was like, "You are not allowed to be mad at me." And it started there, and I, started turning even whiter than I am. And he's like, "We changed the bibby." And I'm like, that's the worst news I've literally heard. Like, and so, there was an iteration of that ski. It was certainly good at other things, but it was not this freaking amazing product. And so I said to Luke on the spot, like, cool, you go make whatever this new thing is you want to make, but can we just keep making the old one and we could call it the Blister Pro? And he was like, yeah. And so we got the thing, we didn't have to go through 10 years of missing a ski. Like, we got the thing brought back. And now, and yesterday, I got to ski here on that ski, and I love it still. And so I'm very happy to report I don't have this sad world where I pine over this old ski I used to love. Like, it's back. So that's my roundabout answer, I guess, to that question. So anyway, hey, thank you all for the very good questions. Thank you all for pulling back the curtain. And that's a wrap. Thanks.